Yes.
Very noted. I guess she's worked on 25 or how many books has she?
Something like that. She's way up there. Yeah, maybe 21, something like that. But
Yeah.
she was very well known as a New Yorker writer back in the day, and she still publishes there. But she had such a run of stories that people associated her with that magazine, and for good reasons. Very.
Oh, New Yorker was one of the great literary publications, and probably still is.
It still is. The trouble is that the number of magazines has shrunk, so now they're bombarded with work. They get stuff from all over the world, and it's only what comes out once a week, but that's 52 stories a year out of however many submissions they get.
But so, how long ago did you publish this? Just
now I forget. 10 years ago? 8 years ago, something like that.
so they can still get it through Amazon?
It's on Amazon, yeah.
Great.
Yep. And it's got reproductions mainly of works of Charlottesville. We've lived in Charlottesville off and on for a long time, and it's one of the more picturesque and friendly places on earth, I think. But Jefferson was a great architect.
Yeah.
And when you walk through his construction, you feel the metaphoric value of his thinking. I mean, in other words, when you go upstairs, you're achieving something and you've earned something. When you go downstairs, you're paying a price or you're descending. I mean, it's kind of a wonderful journey as you go through this space. It feels very meaningful. It's not just another building.
How did you get started, by the way? You've been painting for so long and sculpting for so long. What encouraged you as a child or young adult to...
You probably know people like this, but as a kid, that's all I did. I just drew. And my mother was, of course, pleased because I kept me quiet. I wasn't breaking.
No TV, yeah?
No TV. We weren't allowed to watch TV, but that was fine because I just drew. A friend of mine would come over and we'd just sit and draw for hours and hours. And somehow or other, either there's a genetic predisposition and an environmental stimulus, but somehow you get this feeling that you can convey the world with your hand. And it's very different than photography. It's really different than photography. I'm not disparaging photography. It's an art in its own form. But part of what's happening now in art schools, among other things, is kids are drawing photographs. They take a photograph and then they draw it. And everything is filtered through a machine.
Yes.
And for me, with sculpture, it's very visceral, very hands-on. And when I've started carving stone, and when you take a chisel and a hammer, and the first time you hit that stone, you feel like you're back in ancient Greece. There's no technology that's been invented really since then. So the same thing with painting. It's oil and pigment mixed together. It's colored mud. You're looking at the world. You're putting this colored mud on a surface, and it's just the best feeling in the world when it's going well, or even if it's not going well.
One of the questions that a lot of people ask me is, how does a painter or a sculptor know when a thing is finished?
My brother asked me that. He's a physicist, and he says in physics you can make an experiment, and it either works or it doesn't. And I said, I can't answer that. I don't know. I mean, de Kooning, great American Dutch artist, said, you don't finish paintings, you abandon them.
Yes.
Yeah, so, you knew de Kooning.
Oh yeah, he was my neighbor out in East Hampton. He lived on Woodbine, I lived on Gardner, and little did I realize when I was a young kid owning a house out there
that he was a great guy.
I was into sailboats at that time and racing sailboats, so art was just, if he came over with his wife and drank a little bit and got a little out of character, I just figured he was another crazy artist,
Probably was,
yeah.
I was going to say you probably saw him wallowing down the street on his bicycle. They took his bicycle away, I think, from him.
Well, I forget how many years. I sold that house in '99, but he was gone by that time.
He was, yeah.
And
great name. Great
yeah.
name. One of our last, I think, one of our last great names. Even my wife was hard pleased. We went to the de Kooning show at the MoMA, and we went back about 3 times. She loved it, and I'll never know. I never know what she's going to love and what she will. But boy, that really got her.
It was so interesting. I was at Art Basel about 2 years ago, and standing in front of one of his paintings, and a guy taps me on the shoulder and says, "Hello, Paul." And I said, "Well, how do I know you?" And he said, "Paul, I used to clean de Kooning's brushes." I mean, this is well over 50 years ago now. But getting back to your own career, what phase do you find yourself in today, and how do you pull from the inner strength to sit down or get up and start a new project?
It's a really good question, actually, and it's topical because my wife and I both feel it gets, in some ways, harder and in some ways easier. In other words, I now, if I want to make a painting, the difference between what I conceive of wanting and what I can do is smaller than it used to be. In other words, I've been doing it for almost 47 years, something like that. So if I can make marks that correspond. The hard part is that as you get older, you're more demanding and you're more familiar with what can be done, what you have already done. You don't want to do that again. And so it's not that it's shrinking down, it's that somehow or other you're harder on yourself. I mean,
Yes.
You're more demanding, you're more aware of what, a friend of mine says, do what you can't do, which is sort of.
Oh, that's a toughie.
Yeah. Don't think of an element, don't do the things you've done and gotten so good at. Challenge yourself by doing something that's just beyond reach, which is great. I have a friend who's a poet, and I said, Charles, it's so frustrating painting. Everything is just feels like just out of reach. And he said, well, when it stops feeling like that, you can stop. Which I like.
Well, here at the Gilday Gallery, we have a lot of children come in with their parents, and they walk around, and I ask them what they like and what they dislike. And a lot of them are, in school, and they're doing a little bit of art. And I said, do you know who Picasso is? And most of them surprisingly know who Picasso is.
Good.
And I said, do you realize that Picasso did anywhere from 10 to 12 paintings a day? And I said, do you know why? And they said, no. I said, well, Picasso was practicing. He didn't think he was any good. So going back to what you were just talking about, on trying to overachieve what you did yesterday,
Yeah.
I can understand how someone like a painter like Picasso is practicing every day.
Yeah, I think you try to set the bar higher and higher for yourself, and you are the audience for that, really. In other words, there isn't an external voice demanding, more. And in fact, Picasso apparently hired people to do that towards the end of his life. I'm not kidding. According to a book called Success and Failure of Picasso, he had a little crew come in and say, Pablo, time to get up. And he'd say, go away. And he'd say, no, you're the greatest artist in the world. The world needs more of your work. And he'd say, I'm a fraud. I'm a failure. No, really. And they'd shake him and say, no, you got to. And he'd finally get up and have some coffee and go to work. So I don't have those people. I don't have a staff to do that. It would be helpful. Maybe my wife could do that for me.
I don't know, Nan. I'm sure she could get you motivated in the morning.
Yeah. Well, it's helpful to have a writer and a painter. I'm not sure about two painters or two writers in the same house, but one time I went off and I can paint quite fast, and we were in Middlebury, and I went out and painted 6 landscapes that all went together. Same spot from 6 different views. And when you block a painting in, it goes pretty fast. Then it slows down. And she looked at this thing and said, oh my God, this is out of control. So she sat down and wrote a big, long story. It was about 25 pages long. Just like that. And I said, it wasn't competition. It was sort of inspiration, sort of nudge.
See, that is always, in that I'm not an artist, but I am a gallery owner. And I choose to have what I consider the best in Key West of contemporary art. I mean, my eye gets better and better as days go on and weeks go on. And it's amazing to me to understand where an artist pulls that inner strength. I mean, I understand athletes. They practice, and then in the games, they do what comes natural, if they've practiced enough. But I think of it, in art, I think of it as a totally different thing. I mean, you are always trying to supersede what you did yesterday, and that's almost like golf. That's chasing your own tail.
I was going to say, athletes and dancers tend to have a kind of shorter career because they know their body's going to start failing them. Painters often get better and better. And not everybody, but you hope that there's a late style out there waiting for you somewhere that you can find. Titian, Rembrandt, Michelangelo, all these people had late styles. They lived to a ripe age, but the art got richer and richer, even if they were failures. I mean, Rembrandt went bankrupt, but he knew he was better than ever. So there's a kind of consolation in that. The other thing, though, about athletes is they like my brother's science. There's a high, you either can jump over the obstacle or you can't. And
Right.
they're timing everything, and there's a standard of quality. My brother-in-law says, how come they have ice skate? Ice skating is an Olympic event. Unless you can measure to the second, if it's a judgment call, it's not a sport.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't have a dog in that race, but with painting, it's certainly more like ice skating. I mean, it's a judgment call.
Yes.
It's not, there isn't an authority out there saying this is good, this is bad. And when someone walks into a gallery, they do have to have, I think, they have to trust their perceptions, and they have to know something to get them started. Otherwise, they can be intimidated if they walk in and they think, I don't know enough, and they turn around. Or a museum. And I want people to love art the way I do. So I periodically write about museums, what to see, what to make sure you see.
Yeah.
It's a way not to be turned off, intimidated, and kind of bored by a lot of stuff in museums. Isn't that great?
That's right.
And anyway, so I think that's an interesting question. How do you educate the eye so that it starts discriminating? And I have friends in Charlottesville who collect, and he's a doctor, so he has some income, but he can afford the kind of art I care about, and I do, and my friends and I do. It doesn't cost that much compared to, the art world. They know, they trust, they're a wonderful couple. They go into a gallery and they talk and they disagree and they agree and they buy stuff. And their house is just like a museum. It's an amazing, it's not that big a house, but it's just wonderful. And
So it's little vignettes everywhere.
yeah, they've got it sounds terrible, but they've got every wall sort of covered with something they care about. And they're going to donate that collection, and it's going to be a coherent sense of their art as collectors. In other words, you say you're a gallery owner, and I'm not an artist, but you are participating in what you care for.
Yes.
And as a collector, you're participating in the art itself because they've painted their walls, in effect, with what they love. And that's who they are. And they can donate it as a memorial, not a memorial to themselves, but as a kind of coherent thought process that's visual.
That's great. Because that's kind of a phase-by-phase chapter of their life as they progress.
And eventually, probably they deacquisition things they find that they don't like as much anymore. But that's inevitable. I mean, they weren't born out the forehead of Zeus. They developed taste that whole time. It's wonderful.
I always say the same thing. I mean, I was raised in the Midwest. I never knew what caviar was until I went to Russia or to New York. So I think a lot of art is acquired taste.
Yeah, I have a friend, I had a student actually, who was kind of sour, and I was talking about Matisse in class. And she said, are we supposed to know who Matisse is? And some part of me thought, back to caviar, do I have to eat this caviar? It's pleasure. When you are familiar enough to look at really good Matisse, it's like a steak and the best wine and caviar. It's a pleasure. And I think it's unfortunate that art has made itself seem intimidating and elitist and in a kind of, you don't know enough, you don't know. Okay, of course, none of us know enough at the beginning. But Nobody. Yeah.
We aren't born with it.
No, yeah. And, granted, Picasso's father was a painting teacher, and so he had a leg up. But he had to learn. And sometimes people destroy their early work because they want to look like they were, born from nothing. But Michelangelo destroyed a lot of his early drawings, which is too bad because he learned.
Yeah.
He wanted to be sort of they talked about him as a kind of art god, and so he wanted to live up to his reputation. And he did, for the most part, but he didn't have to cover up his dirty linen.
Yeah. Most artists, it takes quite a while before they can gain a following. And
also gain a certain ability. In other words, one problem with having art taught at universities is that it takes 10 years to get any good at all, in my opinion. It really does. I mean, you work away, and eventually maybe you start to put something together that's yours, fresh, says something. But now, universities, you paint 2 hours, 4 hours a week. That's not going to get you anywhere. And so they've shortcut that by, in my opinion, inventing conceptual art, where you're an artist the first day you walk in. You have an idea, and you're an artist, which is fine, I guess, but it's not painting. Painting takes a long, long time, which is great, because golf takes a long time.
Oh, yeah. And not that I ever consider myself that good, but it's kind of a chase your tail, and I understand that's kind of what I have to think that some artists go through. Everybody seems to develop a style, but then they create a variation on that style.
Well, you want to stay alive. I mean, you're not making a product, you're making something that has to surprise you. I mean, when my wife writes something, she has to surprise herself. If she knows what it is and what it's going to be, why do it?
That's interesting.
Yeah. So she has to start out not knowing how or who these people are even. They're telling her as much as anything else.
So they're telling her a story.
Yeah, their story, yeah.
And then she's adapting it to...
Well, it's in the words that, yeah, it comes as a piece, I think. And you see her writing, she's writing like 2 types 70 words a minute, and she's writing a story. It's like she's just thinking onto the page.
Flow of ideas.
And that's fantastic. And then later she can edit, change, snip, move. But
yeah.
at the moment of, she's on. I mean, and when she's not on, she just stops and says, I'm not feeling it.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's tough.
To think about getting up every day like Andy, your wife, and want to write 10 pages today of a new short story, or of a new, you know.
Well, she works by inspiration. It's tradition. You know, she really has to be inspired. I've always worked more by perspiration. You go to the studio and you see what happens, and some days it happens, some days it doesn't. But she doesn't sit down at the computer every day and think I better try. She has to wait till some little spark, and it's a mystery to her what that spark is. I'm a little more self-conscious. Like I think of ideas that matter to me, and that is hard. I mean, last summer I spent this summer, 2 summers actually, painting doing a series of sketches at a place called Diana's Baths, which is in the White Mountains. It's a series of waterfalls. And I went there with a friend, and he and I are of an age, and there were mothers there with their little kids, and the mothers were a little wary of us. And I felt like even looking at these people was somehow problematic, wrong. And it made me think of the myth of Diana and Actaeon, where Diana is the goddess of the hunt, and she's with her acolytes, and this poor guy comes along, a hunter, with his dogs, and she's a goddess. You're not supposed to see the godhead, so she splashes him with water, he turns into a stag, and his dogs devour him. It's one of those upbeat myths. So I thought, well, I feel a little, my friend and I felt a little like Actaeon. We weren't being devoured by our dogs, but there was some distant echo there. So anyway, I spent 2 years doing paintings, sketches, and then I don't know, 8-foot across painting of Diana and Actaeon, set in the present where a woman is protecting her children from the view of a guy who is wading through the river. And whether or not people care about what I consider the subject, I need that to get going, but that's very different than spontaneously working the way in. In other words, I can't block in a mural 37 feet across and 22 feet high and think, what am I going to do today? I mean, I have to do sketches, plans, I have to know where I'm going more than she does, which is maybe more like a novel writing or writing an opera.
Great. Well, we appreciate your time today, and we want our viewers who come to Key West to come and view some of your work here. These are obviously